The only true kind of romance that exists in this world is love with a woman that has never been with anyone else before you. That's why it's so important to have your first girlfriend when you're still young. Because if you miss out on that teen love experience, that puppy love, as they call it, then that's your only chance. You don't get another chance to have that. There's an old copy pasta I'm sure most of you have seen. I'm pretty sure it originated on 4chan, but it's been posted all over the place by now. But it reads, "You missed out on your chance of a teen love. You will never be 16 again, and you will never be in love, lying on the grass on a warm summer night, looking at the stars, talking, without a care in the world, without worrying about rent, bills, and debts. You will never lose your virginity to someone who loves you deeply, looking into her eyes and saying, 'I love you.' You will never have a girl with you every day after school, pretending to do your homework together, but instead you have fun and cuddle. You're in your 20s now. Now you have to find a good job. You must be a serious man now. Maybe a woman will eventually move in with you, but she has already felt all those exciting feelings, so she is tired and bitter. It is just not the same as her first love. You can try to win a Nobel Prize or make millions of dollars, but nothing will come close to the true feeling of being in love with a young, innocent maiden being carefree 24/7, 365, having no debts, no money, no job, no responsibilities, just hanging out with friends, doing nothing in school, receiving validation and affection, going to summer parties, driving around the city. You missed your chance at teenage love. You missed your life." I think the copy pasta says it pretty well, but I have a lot to say about this topic. I know plenty of guys don't have their first romantic experiences until they're in their 20s or older, especially these days, but by the time you're that old, you already missed out on that crucial developmental milestone. For me, I was in my mid-30s before I had my first girlfriend, and I know that that wasn't love, especially on her end. Women that age have already had all of their firsts. They had their first kiss, their first date, their first argument where they thought they might break up, but then they ended up resolving it and they made up instead. And, at my age, any woman I date, she's going to have responsibilities. She's stressed. She's in the adult world. She's got bills to pay. She's just worrying about trying to have kids before it's too late. She's thinking about how can a man provide for her. So there's always some ulterior motives at this age. And yeah, you can still have a good relationship in your 20s or 30s or even older, but it's not going to be that unconditional love where she's with you just because you make her happy. If you miss out on love in your youth, then you will never get to have that experience. And I do think that that is an important milestone in every man's development. You need that experience. It's crucial because if you never have that, then you'll never be really emotionally secure. And obviously, most guys aren't going to end up marrying their high school sweetheart and having kids together and everything. But without that first romance, you will never be on a level playing field with any woman you date later on, because she will have those memories of her first love back when there was no responsibilities, just carefree, sneaking out of the house after your parents go to sleep just to get an extra hour or two together, sharing your first kiss together, your first everything together. Imagine being with a woman who is your first relationship. So you're having your first everything with her, but whenever she thinks back on all of her important relationship milestones, like first kiss, first whatever, first time making love, she's not thinking about you. You think about her when you have those memories. She's not thinking about you when she thinks back on those times. She's thinking about some other guy. Who knows who it is? Is some other guy in her past. Call me insecure if you want. Normies always want to act like, you're so insecure, bro. What, you don't want to be with a woman that's already been ran through by 7 other guys? You don't want to carry another man's emotional baggage? What's wrong with you, bro? You're so insecure. You need to work on that. You need to work on your insecurities. Like, I don't even care if the reason it bothers me is because I'm insecure. I think that's a reasonable insecurity to have. As humans, we evolved to have insecurities because that's beneficial for our survival. So, yeah, that's a normal insecurity. You should be insecure about that. If your girl has been dogged out by other guys, then you should be insecure, especially if she had all those experiences. Not even talking about a floozy here, but just a woman that's had normal romantic experiences. Like she had her first boyfriend in high school and she maybe dated a couple different guys throughout college or whatever. If your woman has had those experiences and you have not, then duh, of course you're going to be insecure about that. Anybody would be, and you should be. You're just not on a level playing field emotionally. She's your first everything. First experiences are special, by the way. Your first time doing anything always sticks out more in your mind. So when you think of your first kiss and how you felt in that moment, probably just a overwhelmingly intense feeling of affection for whoever it was that you have your first kiss with. For you, if you're with this woman that's your first relationship, you think of her. You think of your first kiss. You think of her. But when she thinks of her first kiss, she's thinking about some guy that she knew when she was like 14 or something. And that warm, affectionate, tingly feeling that you felt the first time you kissed her, that's the same thing she felt for whoever it was that kissed her for her first time. Maybe she loves you and maybe she felt something. She felt good when she had her first kiss with you, but it's not the same as her real first kiss. Okay? You get desensitized to experiences over time. The first time something happens is the most intense time. Okay? That's the one that really matters. That's the one. Okay? If you didn't have that with her, somebody else did, and she's going to think of that time from time to time. She's gonna, you can't get around that. Okay? That's just, you'll have to just deal with that if that's the relationship you're in. And yeah, the thing is, whoever it was that she had her first youthful love experiences with, her first kiss and everything, even if that was 20 years ago, there's a very, very strong likelihood that she still follows that guy on social media, by the way. They probably still, I don't know, they may or may not still have some form of recent contact, whether that be through Facebook messages or whatever. I know this is probably controversial in our degenerate modern society, but it's just a fact that when you have intimate relations with someone, your brain releases all these chemicals such as oxytocin, which is sometimes referred to as the love chemical. And these chemicals, like oxytocin, it makes you feel bonded to the person that you had intimate relations with. It's the same chemical that babies get from their mothers when they breastfeed. Okay, so don't let anyone tell you that there's no such thing as pair bonding in humans as the result of copulation. Oxytocin builds bonds between people. And your brain releases oxytocin just from like holding hands and making eye contact. Okay, you can look this up. This is all real science I'm talking about. Okay, science is gay. I don't trust science. I don't care about science, but I know most of you probably do trust science, so you can just look it up. This oxytocin shit is real, okay? And I do believe in it. And your brain releases oxytocin just from holding hands and making eye contact with a woman, okay? So it's obviously also happening during the deed, more intimate relations than holding hands, It's obviously also happening then, probably to a much greater extent. And you're being pair bonded, okay? And I think that's obvious. Even without knowing the science behind it, you don't need to know about this chemical called oxytocin. You don't need to know about that. It's obvious that you are going to feel some level of increased closeness and an increased bond with anybody that you've been intimate with. I think that's obvious. So don't let these normies convince you otherwise. If a woman has already had partners before you, then she is not going to be as committed to you as you are to her. She might be everything to you, but you are not her one and only. She's already been oxytocined by other guys, probably by two guys at the same time in some cases. Because sometimes women will let one guy oxytocin her from the rear side while another guy oxytocins her mouth. And they don't tell any of their future boyfriends about that because, they don't want you to know how much oxytocin they've been producing. Some chicks out here these days, they're basically like, in the Titanic, the movie Titanic, when it shows the engine room or whatever, and all the workers are just continuously shoveling coal into the furnaces. Well, some of these modern women out here these days are kind of like a furnace on the Titanic. They're just getting a bunch of coal shoved into them over and over, but instead of producing energy, they're producing oxytocin. Because it ain't really coal that they're getting shoved into them. It's something else. They're getting y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay, the metaphor kind of fell apart. It was a weird one to begin with, okay? But whatever. But forget about just being insecure in future relationships. Those early romantic experiences are just a normal developmental milestone. Most people do have all of their firsts during their teen years. Or if not during their teen years, then in their early 20s. Although I do think more and more guys these days are missing out on those milestones, but I still think it's probably most people that do have their first love during their youth. So if you don't have that, if you miss out on young love, then that is a fundamental experience that most people have that you did not have. So it's just another thing that makes it hard for you to relate to other people. And it just makes it hard to fit in. Because this isn't like the first time you watched Naruto or something like, that's not what we're not talking about the first time you had, the first time you had Taco Bell. Your first time experiencing love and being loved back by that person and sharing all these firsts together, that is significant. Okay, that is something meaningful. Okay, so most people have those experiences, and that is a formative part of who they are. Like, just imagine if you were, say, 16 years old, the first time you had a girlfriend, and you had all of your firsts together, that is such a positive experience with a fellow human being during your formative years. I mean, I think it's safe to say a guy that has had that experience is going to be more optimistic and more trusting and just, he's going to connect with other people better. He's going to have a good impression of humanity. He's not going to be jaded. But a guy like me that never experienced a shared affection in my younger years, I'm just permanently broken. And not only that, but that's a crucial learning experience. You need to learn the ways of love, so to speak, when you're still young. It's like learning a language. If you're still a teenager or younger, when you learn a language, you'll have a much easier time learning a new language compared to a full-grown adult. Your young brain is just built to learn and recognize patterns and synthesize new information or whatever. It's harder to learn things like that as an adult. And I do think human connection and like how to talk to a woman and how to deal with conflicts and everything, that is kind of similar to learning a language because it's not really stuff that most people learn just by studying. You know, you can study languages and learn some that way, but the best way to learn a language is just by being immersed in it and experiencing it. So that's the same as human connection and socializing. It's just something you learn through experience. I'm sure most of you have met someone that immigrated to your country at an early age, and they probably don't have much of an accent, if at all. So, like this one guy I went to high school with, for example, he moved to the United States from Eastern Europe when he was like 11 years old, I think. And he said that he never spoke a single word of English until he got here. Well, by the time I met this guy, which was in the 9th grade, I think, so he would have been like 14 or 15. Well, by that time, he didn't even have an accent. He just sounded like any generic American accent. But another guy I knew, an old coworker, he immigrated from Greece when he was already an adult, and he was fluent, I guess. I think he was technically fluent, but he had a really thick accent to the point that it was pretty hard to understand him sometimes. Well, that guy had been in America for like 20 years before I met him. But that's just how it is. Language is something that you have to learn at a young age, or you will never sound like a native, even if you do manage to get fluent. So I think love and relationships and human connection and all of that is the exact same way. You have to experience it and learn it at a young age, or you will never fit in. Okay, you will never be able to connect with other people like a normal person does. Most people learn these things automatically just because they get their first girlfriend or their first boyfriend when they're young, so they're just immersed in romantic interaction and everything that goes along with it at an early age, so they just learn it automatically. They're fluent on a native level. But take me, for example. I'm a 36-year-old virgin. At best, all I can hope for is to maybe someday have the social skills equivalent of my old coworker from Greece that could technically speak English, but he was very hard to understand, and obviously he was an outsider in some regards as far as like not knowing common idioms and not knowing the rules of baseball and things like that. Although I guess that's not really language, that's just a cultural thing. But what I'm saying is, maybe I could somehow get a girlfriend. I mean, I did for like a week or two, but in my opinion, that barely counts. But let's say I managed to actually get into a relationship with a regular woman that actually cares about me and everything. Well, at best, I could maybe learn how to interact with her and handle conflicts and everything on some basic level. but I could never be a natural. There would always just be something a little bit off about how I do things, the way I talk to her and everything. There would just be something off. She could see it. It would be like I have a thick accent. There would be something off. We would have moments of miscommunication, moments where she wouldn't understand what I'm getting at, and not just talking about language here, but just, through body language, through just everything about it. I just wouldn't be a natural, because you can't learn something like that without experiencing it. And you have to experience it young if you want to be a natural at it. If you want to really be on par with the average person, you have to experience young love. You have to. And even just socializing in general with men or women, not in a romantic context, but just, regular socializing. If you missed out on young love, you're just broken in a way. You're not normal. You can't relate. You missed a key milestone in every person's social development. A milestone that most people do experience, but you didn't. So you'll always be stunted. I do feel like, only speaking for myself, but I'm guessing it's like this for other guys in my situation. I feel like I'm just not as mature as most people my age. Like my sense of humor, for example, is kind of stuck in that edgy teenager phase, which, it doesn't really bother me on a day-to-day level, but I know it makes it hard for me to relate to other people, especially like with other people my age. I mean, maybe that's unrelated, but I think it could be because I'm just mentally/emotionally stunted in a lot of ways, just because I missed out on that puppy love experience. I didn't have that. I did not have that normal developmental milestone that the vast majority of people throughout all of freaking history have had. You're supposed to have your first girlfriend when you're a teenager. And if you don't, you're not normal and you never can be. Now you can say it's a chicken or the egg situation where it's like, well, the reason you didn't have your first girlfriend as a teen was because you were super autistic or whatever. And yes, that is true. In my case, that's definitely true because there were girls when I was younger that did show interest in me. But I don't think it has to be a chicken or the egg situation. I think it kind of can be both, If I had managed to have that experience, even though back then I was already emotionally and mentally not normal and not able to connect with people, even at that age. But if back then I had that youthful love experience, that experience of being in love and being loved back in my youth, I think that would have made me more normal. Reaching that milestone would have fixed me in a lot of ways and made me grow into a more normal adult. But I missed out on that. I missed it. And there's no going back. And another thing is just the jealousy of knowing that it's too late for me to ever have that experience. Everyone else got to have that experience, that purest form of affection in the whole universe, but I did not. I mean, obviously not everyone had that experience. I'm not the only one that missed out, but the majority of people had that experience. So on top of everything else, it just feels bad, man. It feels bad. Just anytime I'm out and about and I see a young couple just out, just enjoying each other's company, it's just like, yep, that's something that the vast majority of people have had at some point. It's a normal experience. They're experiencing something pure and great, and just, I didn't have that. I didn't get to have that. And now I'm old and bitter and emotionally stunted. And any woman that I could even hope to get with now, she almost definitely did have that puppy love experience. And now she's old and bitter, but in a different way from how I'm old and bitter. She's bitter because she knows she'll never reach that high again. So any man that does end up with her at that point, like me, for example, I'd just be perpetually getting mogged in her mind by the memory of some bowl cut having douchebag that felt her up in the back row of the movie theater during frickin' Pineapple Express or something back in high school. I do want to say, though, that I do think you can maybe have a good relationship even if you missed out on young love, but that's only if you are extremely blue-pilled, aka delusional. Because, if you're a blue-pilled normie with no ability to think critically, then, you can probably be perfectly happy with your wife that had double-digit bodies by the time she graduated high school. She is for sure alpha widowed like 10 times over, and you're only getting 10%, if that, of what her first love got from her. But if you're a normie blue pill cuck, then sure, that might be a great, fulfilling relationship for you. Just like how a horse can be perfectly happy and calm in an urban environment when it's wearing blinders because it literally cannot see all of the things that would make it freak out. If you're a blue-pilled idiot simp, you can have a great relationship with a bitter old hag that's already used up all of her true affection 15 years ago because you don't have the mental capacity to understand how often she probably daydreams about the time that she bounced up and down on the starting running back's lap in the cramped cab of his dad's Chevy Silverado after prom night. Now, if you also had similar experiences to that back when you were young with other girls, then it might be okay because then you're at least on a level playing field. Like, she might sometimes dream about her prom night, but she also knows that you're daydreaming about your prom night with your high school sweetheart. So you're even in that sense. Neither one of you has more power than the other that way. It's still not perfect, obviously. I don't care how much of a Giga Chad slayer you are. If you are not a cuck, and if your woman has had even one intimate partner before you, then she's not really yours, not fully. And I already know that a lot of y'all will disagree with that, but that's just a fact. It's just a fact. She's not yours fully. She cannot be fully committed to you when she's going to have the memory of some other guy railing her at some point. But if you're at least on a level playing field, like you also experienced young love just like she did, then, sure, you could probably have a great relationship with a woman that's had previous partners. It just won't be the platonic ideal, but what is? Nothing is really the ideal. So that probably is fine. And I'm being sincere. I joke around with some of the things I say, but I sincerely believe you could have a good relationship if you are on a level playing field experience-wise, especially talking about youthful experiences. But I missed out, and there's no going back. It's over for me. And, I still think that it would be worth it to have a girlfriend now, as long as she mostly treats me pretty well. But I do know that it's not like it would fix all my problems, probably wouldn't fix most of my problems. I would definitely have major insecurities in the relationship for good reason, as we've already discussed. But as long as she's pleasant enough to be around and she wants to be intimate with me, I think that would still be an overall plus to my life. Okay, so I don't want this whole rant I'm going on to be just completely doomeristic or whatever. I do think it's still worth it to be with a washed up, used up old hag, probably, as long as she's pleasant to be around. But it just sucks knowing that I missed out. I missed out on those experiences in my youth when you're supposed to have all those firsts. I missed it. And even if I fixed every other problem in my life, like I fixed my looks, I fixed my anxiety issues, and just every problem, I would still have that hole in my past. Or, I mean, I guess the problem is that I'd have no hole in my past. But whatever. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want. But don't talk about this stuff in real life. For your own good, do not try to tell someone you know in real life about my videos, or just don't try to talk about any of the things that I talk about in my video. This isn't stuff to bring up in conversation with people you know in real life, okay? Keep this to, if you want to talk about this kind of stuff, keep it to, obscure YouTube video comments, just for your own good, for the sake of your social life. Do not share my videos, okay? But I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much.